Good evening, and welcome to the CUNY Immigration Assistance Project webinar series. These presentations are designed to provide immigration legal updates to the CUNY community and to highlight the resources available for individuals with various immigration statuses. Tonight's presentation will focus on recent court decisions on the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, commonly known as DACA. Providing legal updates this evening is Supervising Attorney Eleanor Drucker-Ramani. Support and resources available will be covered by Denise Vivar, the manager of the Immigrant Student Success Center at the John Jay College. Behind the scenes technical support is managed by Imani Perkins and Jennifer Wong. Without further delay, let's get started with our disclaimers and a few housekeeping items. For confidentiality purposes, this presentation is offered as a Zoom webinar. There's no access to the audience, and communication with the presenters is limited via the question and answer feature. Please refrain from asking legal questions specific to your immigration case. This webinar will be recorded and saved on the cuny.edu/CIAP website. While the webinar loads, this webinar is being offered tonight to provide legal information and is not offering any legal advice. If you have any specific questions to your immigration case, we'll be sharing ways in which you can request a consultation from the legal team. We want to make sure that you are posting the questions in the chat and you're being mindful that the audience is not seeing your questions. Parts of the information in this webinar is based on the USCIS frequently asked questions that was published in January of 2025. Please make sure that you check that for further information. As Eleanor will share throughout this presentation, the information that we have available to you tonight is current as of today. There are very drastic changes that's happening in the immigration space. So whatever we say to you today may change by the time this presentation is over. So a little bit about CUNY Citizenship now, who we are and the services that we provide. So this organization has been providing free immigration legal services to the CUNY community and New York City residents for the past 27 years. On average, we serve about 8,000 to 10,000 immigrants who we all consider on the path to citizenship. We hold large group processing events on the first Saturday every month. You can call us at 646-664-9400 to request an appointment. A little bit about this program. Thanks to the sponsors, which is covering this, the cost for the services, our funders are the Carolyn Milton Petrie Foundation, the Robin Hood Foundation. And over the summer, we really saw that there was a need to provide this type of services to the CUNY community. So the services that are being led by Eleanor Drucker-Ramani is basically to respond to that need. Since January 20th, a lot of changes that we've seen in the executive orders and the policies that have been issued by both USCIS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the courts are impacting the CUNY community. We wanted to be able to provide not only timely information, but to support students and staff who are suffering because of these immigration changes. As I mentioned before, there are a couple of ways that you can request a consultation regarding a number of different issues. If you are concerned about traveling, whether it's internationally or domestically, if you are losing your status or there's a change of immigration status, if you're an international student where your visa is being revoked or you need to apply for reinstatement, if you're currently on a temporary status or have parole and your status is being terminated, if you're concerned about USCIS or Department of State processing delays, if you have a court hearing and you need support, all of these services can be requested by going online to the cuny.edu website, the / Citizenship Now, or you can go directly to cuny.edu/CIAP. On that page, there is a request for us to call you back. You can select the service that you'd like to get called back on, and a consultation will be scheduled for you with the managing attorney there. A little bit more again. So we are only providing pro se legal support and orientation to CUNY community. If a student, faculty, or staff is detained, Eleanor is available 24/7 The request a callback link goes directly for her when the option that is selected is a student or faculty is detained. Otherwise, if a person has a general request for consultation, the contact center team will call you back and schedule an appointment within 24 to 48 hours. On the rapid response side, if an individual does get detained by law enforcement, what Eleanor and the team will be doing is helping the family and the campus community locate and provide information on how to contact the person who's detained. We'll also provide information regarding the detention and court process. And we're also here to provide support on the bond hearing and securing a bond to have that individual released from custody. To start off tonight's presentation, guys, I am going to introduce you to Eleanor Drucker-Romani. Eleanor is the supervising attorney who is managing this project, and she's going to start off with some legal updates.
Hi, thank you so much, Monique. So a big thing that has just happened at USCIS, which is immigration, is that they're transitioning to primarily electronic payment. So those checks and money orders that we used to send before are no longer going to be accepted. You're going to have to use for online filing a credit card, a debit card, or a bank withdrawal. So you can make your payment through your checking or savings account by using Form G1650, authorization for ACH transactions. You have to indicate whether it's a business or personal account, a checking or savings account. All payments, either by credit card or by check or through your savings account, must be from a U.S. bank. And each filing fee must have a separate G1650 or a separate form, which we'll talk about later, for the credit card. So if I'm filing an I-130, a 765, and a 485, I'm going to need to use 3 G1650s. So as I said, the filing fee must be paid separately. If a payment is declined from your bank as unpayable, USCIS will resubmit the payment only one time. So what happens if you want to pay by credit card, debit card, including prepaid cards? You can use the Form G1450, authorization for credit card transaction. On that form, you have to provide the cardholder's first and last name, a valid credit card number, and the card expiration date. As I said previously, it must be from a U.S. bank. Filing fees must be paid separately, same as if it's coming out of your bank account. In this case, if the card is declined, USCIS does not attempt to process the payment a second time. We've been finding a lot of problems with these two forms. So we suggest that if you're going to be filing any applications with USCIS, you notify your bank or credit card before submitting payments. We found that many payments have been rejected. So USCIS is still allowing payment by check or money order, but in very limited circumstances. To get that exemption, you need to use a different form, which is Form G1651. You have to show you have no access to banking services or electronic payment systems. You have to show the electronic distribution would cause undue hardship, inability to manage an account, or you can show it's a national security or law enforcement related activity, or other circumstances as determined by the Secretary of the Treasury. So another fee, parole. So in addition to the filing fee, as of October 16, 2025, any parole that was filed or pending on that date has an additional $1,000 fee, which is subject to annual adjustments for inflation. So, which is pertinent to our discussion today. It applies to DACA applicants. So if a DACA applicant wants to ask for advanced parole, on the way back, they're going to be asked to pay not on the way back, on their re-entry to the United States, they're going to be asked to pay that $1,000 fee. Surprisingly to me, it also applies to people who have applied for parole in place, which is especially for parents of people of US citizens in the military. And it basically allows them to get their green card in the United States, although they entered without inspection. They're gonna have to pay the $1,000 fee. Re-parolees are gonna have to pay the $1,000 fee. Individuals who are coming from outside the United States under what's called humanitarian parole, subject to the fee. Individual release from custody, not bond. We're talking about USCIS custody. Some people are released from custody because of humanitarian or health grounds. They are going to have to pay the fee. And as I stated before, the payment is due upon approval or entry into the United States. Okay, but there are exceptions, thankfully. Adjustment of status applicants who travel on advanced parole don't have to pay, which is good news. Cuban or Haitian entrants, medical emergency, and if the parolee is a minor, the accompanied legal guardian or parent, organ or tissue donors coming to the United States, close family members of a person in the US whose death is imminent, or a funeral of a close family member in the US. Some less usual cases that also has the exemption are adopted children with an urgent medical condition who is in legal custody of the adopted parent, an individual returned to a contiguous country, which is usually Mexico, returning to attend an immigration hearing, and an individual who has assisted or will assist the US government in a law enforcement matter and is not admissible to the United States. Okay, asylum fees. So we prepared three slides on this, and as of probably 4:30, this has all changed. But okay, so prior to 4:30 this afternoon, there was an annual asylum fee of $100. It applied to applications filed at least 1 year ago and initial applications that were filed as of July 22nd. The annual fee was per asylum applicant, not per family member. So what that means, I'm the principal applicant, I'm married, I have 3 kids, so that's a family of 5. If my math is correct, it would be $100, not $500. No additional fees for the past years that the application have been pending. And to get information about this, which just changed like 2 hours ago, you have to check the USCIS payment website, or you'll receive a notice by mail, and there's a 30-day requirement to pay. Okay, the same thing applies for the court, Executive Office of Immigration Review. They will send the notice by mail or electronically as of September 23rd. When you submitted a new asylum application, you had to submit it with a receipt showing this payment. If it wasn't filed with the receipt, the immigration court could reject the application, and failure to pay the annual fee could have led to the case being considered abandoned or dismissed. But as I just said, ASAP, which is Asylum Advocacy Group, just was in litigation with this, and it seems that this fee is currently stayed, meaning that we no longer have to pay it. It stayed temporarily, so let's see what happens. But this just goes to the point that everything is changing every single day, every single minute, so you have to be really up on it. So I'm going to discuss DACA. What is DACA? It's an executive order signed in June of 12. It allows some undocumented individuals brought in the US as children to work legally with an employment authorization card. It allows people to obtain ID cards and Social Security cards. Those with removal orders or in proceedings are eligible to apply for DACA. It's very important to note that DACA is discretionary. and does not provide a path to LPR status or citizenship. Let's go through a little bit of the history. This has been going on since 2012, so we're talking 13 years have passed. So DACA emerged after Congress failed to pass the DREAM Act. So in 2012, June, DACA was announced and you were allowed to get work authorization and renewed DACA in 2-year renewal periods. In 2013, they tried again to get some immigration reform, Congress, and the efforts failed. In September of 17, the administration announced plans to end DACA. In January of the next year, the federal court ordered the USCIS to continue accepting renewal. In June of 20, the Supreme Court ruled that the current administration's rescission of DACA was unlawful. In July of 20, DHS limited the renewal period to 1 year and rejected new applications. In July of 21, the federal judge in Texas ruled that DACA was unlawful, but continued to allow existing recipients to renew. October 22, the administration issues a final rule to preserve and fortify DACA. September 23rd, 23, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upholds a ruling that DACA is unlawful. In October of 24, it goes up to the Supreme Court. And in now, October 25, DACA renewals continue while legal challenges proceed. So why are we talking about this? This is 13 years. We're talking about it that even though litigation is ongoing, we expect a final decision regarding initial DACA in December, but possibly later. And as you'll see, as I continue this presentation, there's a lot of documentation to obtain. So you don't want to wait till the last minute to try to get the documentation that you're going to need. So there is time to gather the evidence in support of initial DACA applications. And just to note that current recipients can continue to renew their status. So we're going to discuss initial first-time DACA requests. So there's a lot to prove. So I got a call this afternoon from somebody who was born, I think she said in 2010, and she said, I want to apply for initial DACA. That's not happening because she did not arrive in the US before turning 16 and before June 15, 2007. You had to reside in the US continuously since that June 15, 2007 date until June 15, 2012 up to today. You had to have no lawful status on June 15, 2012, and any lawful status after June 15, 2012 expired or terminated before the request for DACA was submitted. In addition to proving when you enter the United States, you have to prove that you're currently in school or have graduated from high school or have attained a GED certificate or are an honorably discharged veteran of the Coast Guards or Armed Forces of the U.S. And in addition, have not been convicted of a felony, a significant misdemeanor, or 3 or more misdemeanors, or otherwise pose a threat to national security or the public. So the first thing you need to do is prove your age and identity. We found that the easiest way to do that is a copy of the passport, which shows the bio page, but you can also use a copy of the birth certificate with certified English translation and a photo ID. You can use other government-issued photo ID, or you can use student ID card issued by the school with a photo. So how am I going to prove I've been here before my 16th birthday if we're talking about 2007? So the first proof would be a passport if you entered with inspection, with an emission stamp, Form I-94, I-95, I-94W, then you're going to have to start searching, and that's why we want you to start now. You're going to look for school transcripts, report cards, school schedules, awards, certificates, automobile license receipts or registration, ID cards, class photos with names and dates. The next slide is going to give more information, but this is not an exclusive list. Anything that has your name and date on it that can prove physical presence within the required period can be used. More examples: medical record, vaccination records, doctor visit logs, hospital stays, dental records, prescriptions, official records from a religious organization, tax returns, insurance policy, deeds, mortgage, rental agreement. Think you get the message. So anything that's a non-English document, it needs a certified English translation. And it has to be submitted with the application. So to maintain continuous residence for the required period, any departures must have been brief, casual, and innocent, and had to occur on or after June 15th and before June 15th of 2007 and before June 15th of 2012. You have to show the absence was short and reasonably calculated to accomplish the purpose for the absence. You have to show that the absence was not because of an order of exclusion, deportation, or removal. You also have to show that the absence was not because of an order of voluntary departure or an administrative grant of voluntary departure before being placed in exclusion, deportation, or removal. And you have to show that the purpose of the absence while outside the U.S. was not contrary to law. How are you going to prove you have that high school diploma? Well, you might have a high school diploma, and that's proof positive. You might have a GED or task equivalency certificate or proof of enrollment in a GED, because you don't have to show that you graduated. You just have to show that you're enrolled in a GED or high school program. You can show that by a personal letter from a program providing enrollment, copy of the class schedule, or school records and transcripts. You can also show proof of enrollment in classes to build skills for the GED, like an English as a second language class. You have to show enrollment in an education literacy. You can show enrollment in an education literacy or career training program, including vocational program, including vocational training, but it has to have a purpose of improving literacy, math, English, leading to placement in post-secondary education, or it has to be job training or employment which works towards such placement. The program has to be wholly or partially funded by federal, state, county, or municipal grants, or administered by nonprofit organization, or if funded by other sources and other than those mentioned, it has to demonstrate effectiveness. To be considered currently enrolled in school, you must be enrolled in school on the date you submit a DACA request. The other way to qualify for DACA, if you can show proof of honorable discharge from the Coast Guard or U.S. Armed Forces. So you can use Form DD-214, Certificate of Release or Discharge. You can use NGP Form 22, National Guard Report of Separation and Record of Service. You can use military personal records or military health records. So can you use affidavits? Yes, in some cases you can, but the use of affidavits is very limited. You can use it to explain a gap in documentation showing your continuous presence from June 15, 2007 until June 15, 2012. You can use it to establish departures during the required period of continuous residence to show that the departures were brief, casual, and innocent. You can use it to prove the start of the continuous residence. The only people who can use it to prove the start of continuous residence is if you arrived in the US at or before the age of 8. Okay, we discussed one of the elements of DACA is criminal. So if you have one felony, you cannot get DACA. What is felony? A felony has a possible sentence of more than 1 year. Even if the state labels the offense as a misdemeanor, that doesn't count. You have to look at the possible sentence. What's a significant misdemeanor? That word does not exist anyplace else in the immigration laws. It's specific for DACA. It's where you have a possible sentence of less than 1 year, but more than 5 days, and it's a crime of domestic violence, sexual abuse or exploitation, unlawful possession, abuse of a firearm, drug distribution, or DUI, or any offense where the applicant received a sentence of more than 90 days. How do I determine if it's more than 90 days? Well, you don't have to spend the full 90 days in custody. You look to the sentence. A suspended sentence is not included in this determination. And if you're picked up by ICE and you stay there for 120 days, that's not included in the determination either. So you look at the criminal court sentence. Okay, the other thing that's going to disqualify you from DACA is 3 or more non-significant misdemeanors. That's a misdemeanor with a possible sentence of less than 1 year, but more than 5 days. So it cannot be you get 4 charges on the same day for the same offense, and they're arising of the same act, omission, or scheme of contact. That would not be considered 3 non-significant misdemeanors. It has to be 3 separate incidents that are not related. Even if you don't have a felony, significant misdemeanor, or 3 non-significant misdemeanors, as I said, this is discretionary, and USCIS may still use its discretion to deny the request. They're going to look at juvenile delinquency adjudications, expunged conviction, foreign crimes, a large number of minor offenses, so you don't think jumping this turnstile is a problem, or you don't think like a traffic offense, but if you have a lot of them, that can become an issue. They can also look at dismissed charges that indicate threats to national security. They can look at gang membership, participation in criminal activity, participation in activities that threaten the United States. You should note that even, and I think we passed one as a slide, that even if something is not a significant misdemeanor, it can still be an issue. The other thing that we need to worry about as of January 29th, 2025 is the Lake and Riley Act. What is the Lake and Riley Act do? It expanded mandatory detention for those who entered the US without being admitted or parole or without valid entry documents. And the important thing about Lake and Riley, you don't have to be convicted of anything. You can be charged, you can be arrested, you can admit to the crime, or you can be convicted of a burglary, theft, larceny, shoplifting, assaulting a law enforcement officer, or any crime involving deadly or serious bodily harm. So I wrote here no exceptions for DACA. So DACA individuals were brought here by their parents. A majority of them were brought, in my personal experience, were brought EWI. Doesn't matter how old you were, if you were brought in EWI and you were charged or convicted of or arrested or admitted to any of these acts listed here, you're subject to mandatory detention. There are no exceptions for DACA. So even minor crimes or infractions can seriously affect immigration status. Jumping the subway turnstile, not paying a bus fare, and public drunkenness. Crimes expunged from the record can still result in negative immigration consequences. So there are some exceptions. Minor traffic offenses such as driving without a license are not considered non-significant misdemeanor for DACA purposes. Expunged convictions are not considered a bar to DACA, but may be considered as a matter of discretion. Juvenile delinquency adjudication, again, not a bar, but can be considered as a matter of discretion. USCIS looks at all the circumstances and then makes a decision. Okay, now we're going to talk about, so you gathered all your evidence, you proved all your elements, and you get a denial. What are you going to do? Well, you can't appeal it because that's not allowed under the regulations, but you can call USCIS at this number given here to request a review of the denial in certain circumstances. So you might get a denial saying you abandoned the case because you failed to respond to a request for evidence or notice of intent to deny, but you know you submitted it timely, so you can ask for a review. If you moved, you have to had filed a Form AR11 before the RFE or the node was issued, and USC mailed the RFE or node to the wrong address. So you have the burden of proof to let immigration know that you moved, and if you didn't notify them, then they can deny it for abandonment for failing to respond. So sometimes you're going to have to go get your biometrics taken with your fingerprints and photographs. Those biometrics are going to go to the FBI. You appear, and then you get a notice saying you didn't appear. So if you can prove that you appeared, you can get the denial reviewed. Or if you ask for rescheduling before the scheduled appointment date, you can also get it reviewed. So you have an appointment for January 1st. You sent them, not by mail, but you called them or you did it electronically. You sent them a request for rescheduling on December 24th. They don't have a right to deny it for non-appearance. Also, you've gotten your package all together. You've met all the elements, and they say you didn't. So if they don't consider evidence that shows that you were under the age of 16 as of June 15, 2012, or in unlawful status on June 15, 2012, I'm sorry, there's a typo here. It should say under the age of 16 as of June 15, 2007, or in unlawful status on June 15, 2012, or next, physically present in the US on June 15, 2012 until today, that you met the educational or honorable discharge veteran requirement. You sent in those papers and they said you didn't. Or if you paid for the fees and they said you didn't, those are all grounds for review. The good news is that denied applicants can reapply. So this is the end of my presentation. I just really encourage you to start gathering documents now, so when the law is changed, you can apply timely.
Thank you, Eleanor. As I mentioned at the start of this program, these presentations are brought to you and they're also sponsored by the Undocumented and Immigrant Student Programs at CUNY. Joining us today is Denise Vivar, who is the Immigrant Success Center Manager at John Jay College. And John Jay College was the first campus within the CUNY system to lift up one of these centers. Denise, handing it off to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I know it's been raining pretty bad and it's cold and it feels a little bit depressing. So thank you for being here. So I'll be talking about some resources and support for students with DACA and also for students without DACA. So I'll start with two of the big ones that maybe you're already familiar with, but it's always important to know that even though there are so many policy changes happening at the federal level, these still remain. So one of them is the New York State Dream Act. So the senator Jose Peralta New York State Dream Act provides students with access to TAP, Excelsior, and other state administered grants. And it's important to know that this hasn't changed, right? So it's for students that are coming into college and thinking about what they want to do, and also students with DACA. Even though I know students with DACA in colleges settings has like phased out, this still remains a resource at the state level. And the other scholarship that I want to talk about that I hope many of you know, the Dream.US scholarship. With all the changes that happened, Eleanor gave an overview of the timeline of how DACA has changed. The Dream.US scholarship has been able to adjust to those changes. Their application will open on November 1st. And even though the qualifications are very like limited, right? Students need to have come in a certain time before the age of 16. It still benefits a lot of students. So please be on the lookout for the resources, as they will have promoting materials on their website. Other resources that I want to talk about, so fellowships. I know we talk about that fellowships are a way for undocumented and immigrant students to be able to receive professional development opportunities. So usually I tend to look for fellowships, right? Fellowships that are inclusive. And I know a concern that I do get from a lot of students that graduated under DACA with their bachelor's, it's going into their master's. They want to know how can they get financial aid, and the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship is one of the fellowships that supports students at the graduate level, and this specifically is available for undocumented and immigrant students. Their deadline, I believe, is either today or tomorrow, so it closed, but it opens every year. So I strongly encourage people to look into this. Another fellowship that it's open for students with or without DACA, it's a UCLA Dream Summer. And through this fellowship, a lot of students have been able to benefit from professional development. Even though this program it's in California, it's open nationally. So students from all over the country can apply for these fellowships. I think so far we have gotten like 8 John Jay students since like 3 years ago to be able to apply. They did change some of their policies. So now they used to have a retreat in California. Now it's virtual, but they are still supporting students. And this one does not require, it's open to everyone, regardless of immigration status. Another platform that I want to share is Parker Dewey. So I learned about this platform through the Dream.US because that's where they host their internships, but they actually have an array of other internships that students, even if they're not Dream.US scholars, they can still apply. And I know other nonprofit organizations and colleges that use Parker Dewey as a third vendor to be able to provide micro internships to students. I know sometimes it's hard to keep track with scholarships and everything that is happening, but Madelv actually updates their scholarship resource guide every year, and we send out a newsletter, and a lot of the scholarships that we get are from there. So I encourage you everyone to like look at it, save it, be able to share it with students. But another resource that I wanted to share is Beyond DACA, so the President's Alliance on Immigration and Higher Education created a series called Beyond DACA, and this series specifically focused in supporting undocumented and immigrant students with alternative pathways, whether that was legally or employment based. And they created a program that's called Legal Pathways Learning Tool and legal consultations, where they can provide consultations to students that currently have DACA. And let me remove the word of students. I keep saying students with DACA, but a lot of them are not students anymore. They're older adults that may still have DACA. So they've been providing legal screenings to see if there are alternative ways that they can adjust their immigration status. I did refer 2 students to this program where they got a consultation. One of the students was able to get a O visa, and another student was able to obtain an employment visa. So this is one of the ways that students can check if they are alternatives. And in addition to that, they also provide resources or alternative resources to employment for students that do not have DACA, or individuals that do not have DACA, like entrepreneurship and guides. If you look at the hub, it's under the higher education immigration portal, and I think all the resources here will be shared. But they basically have a whole bunch of guides and a whole bunch of directories, and they guide students step by step to what can be their alternatives. So I know these are not all the resources. I did only have a limited amount of time, but if you have any other questions or thoughts, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I can definitely share additional resources. And I'll pass it back to Monique.
All right. Thank you, Denise. We have just 2 questions in the chat. So for folks who are joining us right now, we want to make sure that you know you can drop your questions in the Q&A at the bottom. I think we breezed through 2 parts of this presentation. The first one being, Jennifer, how can someone contact us for a consultation?
You can contact us for a consultation through our website, CUNY Citizenship Now /CIAP. And you can also contact us with our inbox is immigrationhelp.cuny.edu. So you can email us there as well.
All righty, guys. So the website is cuny.edu/CIAP. And there's basically a form on that site that anyone can request a consultation with us. There's logic built into the form. So as long as you select that you're either a CUNY staff or faculty member, that would filled out a drop-down menu for you, and you can select what issue you're facing. If you select that you have an individual who is detained, that gets routed directly to Eleanor's inbox, and she will call you immediately, or within 24 hours. If you select that you have a change of status or loss of status issue, if you have a court hearing that's coming up and you are traveling abroad and want to have a consultation, that gets routed to our contact center. Someone will call you and schedule you for a consultation with either Eleanor or our part-time attorney who's offering services in the evenings and on some Saturdays. Denise, we did not highlight this. We were focusing on DACA, but the Legal Pathways Project also offers consultation to folks with TPS and basically other immigration status. If you can just expand upon that.
Yes, so it is also for folks that might have other, that might be in a precarious immigration status. So yes, for students that do have TPS, you have to submit a form. And they basically, it's like a screening before they reach out to you, and they will let you know if they can take your case and if they can provide a legal consultation. But that is through the President's Alliance.
Yeah, folks. So just to emphasize, we will be posting these resources and we are going to be posting this webinar. But in the interim, as Denise mentioned, there is an organization that's called the President's Alliance. And what they are offering is a free and comprehensive consultation to folks who are on deferred, temporary, here on humanitarian parole, any kind of immigration status. They want to make sure that you are getting the options that are available to you that could lead to something more permanent, such as a work visa or green card, or potentially U.S. citizenship. So that is a service that we do not provide, and that is a service that is available to you because they're looking at not just the family-based options, they're also looking at employment-based options, and that services is provided free of cost to anyone. Alrighty. I see no additional questions in the chat. I am just going to lift up 2 pages. The first one is cuny.edu/immigrant, and that page is for the undocumented and immigrant student programs within the university. That offers a host of resources. In our last webinar, Dr. Cynthia Carvajal went through the number of resources that her team has compiled that is available not only to students, but also faculty faculty and staff. We want to make sure that you guys are aware of those resources. And cuny.edu/citizenship. Now, we continue to post legal updates. As Eleanor mentioned, as we get them, we filter them, figure out whether or not this is an actual policy or if this is a myth. And as they come in, we post them on our website. So you can always check us at cuny.edu/citizenship now for legal updates. Alrighty, folks. If there are no questions or no other questions, I'm going to thank you guys for all being here tonight. Any final words, Eleanor and Cynthia, before we close up?
My final word is please contact us for a consultation.
Cynthia. I'm saying Cynthia. Denise.
Yes, I'm Denise. No, not for now. But you can definitely reach out. Feel free to reach out to me if there are any other resources that you are looking for.
Alrighty, folks. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We will be back next month. Unfortunately, we can't have these scheduled as we were hoping to have them scheduled. There are so many things happening within the immigration space that we take account of what's happening. We pick the topic that is most relevant to the CUNY community, and then we will post on the website the next webinar. As long as the form that you need to register for these webinars is open and active, and we will continue to email you when these webinars are scheduled. With that, I will sign off. And now, Mani, you can close the webinar. Thank you, guys.